Today's card of the day is Aerial Extortionist. 3 and a white for a creature, bird, soldier with flying. Whenever Aerial Extortionist enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to one target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may cast it. Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. 4/3. This card was on my radar for a while, especially when it came out. I started playing it immediately. I'm definitely a big fan of a card that not only generates value, but also is able to sort of bring tempo swings wherever I can. Being in white, it does take quite some time to generate value, particularly mono white. I thought this card being a relatively cool, repeatable removal, as well as a card draw engine would be really great. And at 5 mana, I was like, okay, maybe that would be worth it. So for 5 mana, you're getting immediately the ability to exile something on the battlefield. I think it's best to exile the largest thing if you're going for actual disruption, but if you want to get a quick cantrip off this for 5 mana and to stunt someone to give like a little hurdle that's not going to do much and it's gonna, they're gonna cast it regardless, say Exile Soul Ring on ETB. This could play a 3 mana draw card, right, with potential upside of drawing even more cards. And I think that's a little too slow from my experience. I think once you get to 5 mana, and depending on your power level, you usually want things to be a little more game winning oriented, or things that have a much larger way of disrupting people. Like 3 mana for a 4/3 that it does hit, right? But also 4/3 that exiles one thing on ETB is probably worth something like, I want to say 4 mana, and right? And if it cantripped, maybe you could bring it to 5 mana, something like Return to Dust, but Return to Dust also has added benefit of exiling it forever. I would say that would be about 5 mana if it Return to Dust cantripped. But this being unrepeatable removal, okay, you could probably think of it as like 4 mana, or I'm sorry, 3 mana. Seeing we have cards like exile target artifact or enchantment and white for 3 mana most of the time. You have sorcery speed disenchant. I'm sorry, you have disenchant, but it doesn't exile forever. And of course, this is like hard to compare in vacuum, right? Can't always compare everything in vacuum because it's gonna be repeatable. So the fact that it's repeatable means you have to have some way of slowly getting that value into it without like having it completely strong and everyone playing it, right? I would say at first cost it'd be 2 mana is fine, right? But on a body, probably bring it up to 3 mana. We have things like Trigon Predator that destroys things on damage, so it takes a turn to deal damage, and that's 3 mana. Also, it's 2 colors, so it's a little harder to cast, I guess, in a sense. And that does need a turn to attack. This doesn't need a turn to attack. So maybe 4 mana is fine for this, but also has a benefit of having like this ghostly pilfer effect, which is drawing a card whenever someone places something anywhere other than their hand. This one is rough to evaluate. Like, yeah, they can cast things from their command zone and you get a card draw from it. But at 5 mana, I think most people have already cast their commanders from their command zone. And yeah, the ATB can exile their commanders, and they'll probably want to cast again. A lot of decks do want to play their commanders for good reasons. I think it's generally too slow to rely on that part of the card. And granted, the second ability, I guess, the non-flying ability, does set that up to being able to draw a few cards with that second ability. I think it's a little too infrequent that that effect happens. I think Ghostly Pilfer works well because it draws a card pretty early before any other commanders come out, and that's why it's good. I'm not saying this isn't bad, it's just the chances that they're playing anything other than their hand is usually not too often. Like sometimes you'll see like Faithless Looting being cast a few times here and there, but usually it's not happening too much. I think most things that actually want you to cast from graveyard are probably like the turbo colors, so black and red, which I guess in a way this is kind of hitting against that. But at 5 mana, those turbo colors are probably doing it way before this comes out. So I have reserved my my thoughts on it being particularly strong in that sort of environment. But other than that, like I've had a fairly good time playing with this card as a means to sort of slow the game down. It's definitely tempo oriented. Like hitting a like Alhammer's Archive with this, definitely slow people down. Hitting a Heuristic Study, especially when the person who you're hitting with this is behind you. That means they have to go particularly long time without getting the value from the thing that they recently cast. Right? It's really strong in that sort of way. If you get this out early, maybe turn 3, maybe you can justify it because I don't think many people want to. There's reason to hit it, but also it's like, do you want to spend your mana on something that isn't really permanently removing things from you, right? It's just like it's doing exactly what the picture is showing. It's taking your thing, picking it up, and dropping it down. Um, I don't know. There's a lot that can be said about this card, but I think generally this card might be a little too slow. but it's very fun to play with. It's very fun to play with and see people react against it, especially when it keeps on taking their things and they have to recast them. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'm definitely interested in seeing how we can play this in a different sort of deck. Like maybe you want to go with like a more stacksy based deck with this. Maybe I should try that. But this is definitely one of my favorite pet cards, I will say. Loving the name, loving the draw card aspect of it. It's real fun, but I think it might be too slow. But of course, let me know what y'all think in the opposite below. Peace out, and I'll catch y'all later.